I get to test the latest and greatest in Chinese EVs that the Chinese automakers bring out on a weekly basis. However, today I really want to try what a legacy brand is doing in China for a China-only car. So I've got hold of a BMW i3, an electric BMW 3 Series. And this is only sold in China. My name's Elliot Richards. Let's find out what it's like. Yes, the i3, not that i3, but the G28 i3. In fact, called the i3 eDrive 35L, or some combination of those letters and numbers. And this is a China-only electric 3 Series, and it's priced for about 350,000 RMB. But you can get these on the second-hand market for about 150,000 RMB, or about 23,000 US dollars. The problem with Legacy Auto in the last few years is they've introduced an electric range, but they decided to go off-piste with the design, saying electric owners want something different that doesn't look like an ICE car. And so like VW with the ID3 and BMW with the iX and the i4 have kind of gone in the wrong direction. This one doesn't have the beaver teeth for the mouth. It's got rear-wheel drive, it's got about 300 horsepower, it's got 5 seats. This is exactly the kind of car that people want to buy, but it's only available in China. And in fact, this is actually selling pretty well here against the new incomers. So it should be interesting to see what this is really actually like. It's all got all the right ingredients. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about the exterior because it's a BMW, it looks like a normal BMW. It's got exactly the same as the ICE model, except this is the longer wheelbase version. So China has a long wheelbase version of the 3 Series, and this is the same. And they put a battery underneath there, giving it a decent range. Again, it's not got huge wheels. I think these are 18s. You can get 18s or 19s for this. And again, unmistakably 3 Series down the side. I think it looks really good. I think it could do with slightly bigger wheels. I would love for them to do a M version of this, M electric car. I think that would look really cool. But for now, it's the humdrum electric 3 Series. Again, coming around the back, not really any differences. The only weird thing with the design is they've kind of highlighted where the exhausts have gone missing. So instead of making this line go all the way across here, they've said there used to be an exhaust here and here as well. So I think I'd probably get rid of this trim. You've got kits on Taobao you can buy to get rid of that. And this BMW logo is blue, because blue means electric, apparently. So I actually have a bit of a personal connection with BMW. It was one of the first cars I ever drew when I was 16. It's my dad's black BMW 320, I think it was. X611 SHK was the number plate. And it was a manual BMW. Yeah, I wasn't very good, but I drove a car, I think, for the first time. My preconceptions say it's not going to be anywhere near the Chinese competitors, but I think there's a lot that Chinese automakers could learn from BMW in this situation, as well as BMW could learn from them. So let's find out what some of those things are. Now, with a Chinese automaker's car, I can talk for a very long time about the specs and this, that, and the other, and all the amazing technological things it has in that car. But for this, I want to get straight down into what it's like to drive, because the Chinese automakers, they can pay whoever else to tune the chassis and the design and everything else. But BMW have been building good driving cars for many, many years. So has this translated over to this BMW? Well, interestingly, BMW say on their own website that this has been tuned for specifically the Chinese market. So they didn't exactly say what that was, but I imagine slightly softer suspension, maybe less tactile feel from the steering wheel. But I know immediately from getting in this car, it feels like a BMW of 20 years ago, of 10 years ago. It just feels really good. And that's the thing, right? Let me just turn the fans down. Oh, that's nice and cold. Climate menu, turn the fans down, nice. And then that kind of really demonstrates the difference between a legacy automaker and a Chinese automaker. I can adjust most things with buttons because there's a lot of buttons in here. Now, I'm not going to criticize BMW for a lot of buttons. This is what European consumers want. This is what American consumers want, mostly. I personally still am a big fan of making this like this. Now, I think it's a bit messy. I think the design's not very clean. This could be much tidier. Yeah, there's too many and it's a bit messy and I don't really like them. But the Chinese automakers also learn from BMW. You don't want everything chucked on screen where you can't see it. I want a few basic things on screen. My climate control, fine, I can adjust the temperature there. And it's all, you know, very carbon fibery, plasticky, you know, It's well built, it's, you know, it's BMW. Yes, it's built in China, but it feels like home. It feels comfortable, it feels normal, whereas the Chinese automakers are pushing in every direction to see what sticks, what works, what doesn't work, and so sometimes they make big mistakes, whereas the Germans with this are a lot more cautious. Yes, the screen and the operating system are not the best in the world, but it's fairly intuitive, and I think coming from that European point of view, making this kind of really easy to use, instead of burying everything 10 deep in the menu in some Chinese automakers' cars, it's kind of a bit better. Don't like the UI or how it looks, but functionally it works, and it feels like a BMW. BMW knows how to make a car that can drive. The Chinese automakers are still new into that journey. The thing which lets this car down is all of this stuff, all around me, what's surrounding me. For example, I was sitting in this car earlier, reading my notes about this car. After 20 minutes, all the air conditioning turns off. You think, well, why? Like an electric car from China, that would stay on because you could stay in your car for hours. You can sleep in your car overnight in a lot of models. So why does it turn off? So I had to put my foot on the brake, start the engine. It's just these small details that haven't really been thought out as much as the Chinese automakers. But however, the driving in this is in the top 90%, I would say, compared to Chinese EVs. There's just something about it, whether it's how it handles dynamically, how stiff the chassis feels, it's so much more responsive than the L6 that we drove. There's a way to it, and I can't really put my finger on it. It's like a BMW-ness that this car just has. I'm gonna say BMW have done a really good job on the interior rear of this car, well, for me. So I'm talking about this from my perspective. I'm not a Chinese consumer, but this nails it. The seat comfort is outstanding. Like how I'm sitting and how the back dips down, and the ergonomics, that's the word I'm looking for, is amazing. It's probably one of the better cars that I've sat in the back of, just because it supports me so well. This just works. I think there's too much plastic, I think there's too many nasty buttons, and it's a bit yucky down here. But in terms of how it actually feels for sitting, great. They've nailed it, it's spot on. Door handle, I love a good door handle. Please don't get rid of these. But these are seen as old tech in China, right? Like why do this when you can just press a button? Another huge benefit of this car is that it isn't so much nannying in the Chinese automakers. There's so much binging and bonging and warning, camera ahead, warning, there's someone behind you, warning, you're close to this, be careful of this. There's none of that. None of that at all. It puts the driver much more in control of the actual car. Actually have to do some thinking for yourself from a European or UK perspective. I like that. I like having to think about the drive, make it more involving. But from a Chinese consumer perspective, that's less of a benefit. They want a car which takes them from A to B, and they don't have to do so much thinking about it. So differences in opinion, obviously. Does this have the most amazing spec? No, it doesn't. But can it accelerate? Oh yes. I mean, it's an electric car, it accelerates really well. It's got one 210 kilowatt electric motor at the rear. Yes, it's rear wheel drive, like a classic BMW. Now in terms of that performance, it's, again, relatively laughable. It's ridiculous saying that. 0 to 100 kilometers an hour, 0 to 60 is 6.2 seconds, which you think, gosh, that seems slow now compared to these 3-4 second electric cars that are on the market. Yes, it's a little bit slow, but let's be honest, below 7 seconds, you're not going to notice much difference. And the acceleration in this, that's the important thing, still feels brisk, feels exciting. Yeah, that's quick. And I do feel the brakes, the acceleration, the whole pedal feel is so much better modulated than one of its rivals, and it just feels, I don't know, just right. And then when you're turning and you're cutting in ahead of other cars or turning around corners with a little bit of speed, it feels great. It feels planted to the road. You feel safe, you feel secure, and I think that's part of the reason I like this car quite a lot. But you can only hold on to that feeling for so long. And of course, BMW has a good brand reputation in China, but it's up against so many rivals now. In Europe, something like this would do so much better than some of the other hideous or overpriced offerings that are from BMW at the moment. The biggest letdown, of course, in this car is this, the screen. And it's not bad, like it's usable. It's even in English for me, which is great. But the maps, for example, are, I don't know, they're not even like the two map makers who make good maps here in China. It's not one of those. It's just not great. It could be so much better. Using the actual screen, it's fast. It's not exceptionally quick at responding. The feel of my fingers on the screen doesn't feel great. The buttons, like what the actual buttons on here look like, are a bit ugly. It's just a bit meh. And they could easily borrow something from somewhere else or just have Apple CarPlay. Apple CarPlay is not a big thing here. Doesn't have Apple CarPlay, which is a bit strange. It does a job. You want a fast car, get any other electric car. You want a luxurious car, get a super luxury car. You want a BMW that's an electric car, this basically is your only option. See, I think BMW got this car like 85% right. They've got all of the right ingredients, but they're missing like the special spices and the special herbs which make a car amazing. Now, for example, the boot. It's got a normal boot, opens by itself. 410 litres, pretty normal, not really much to say about this. But then when you come to close the boot, every Chinese car I know has a button to close the boot. Even the cheapest models. This, you have to do it yourself. Even the key, you can't do it. It's kind of like, that's just that little detail would make this car so much better. Now again, it's that 15% where I think BMW have struggled to make up to its competitor, get as close to its competitors as they could do. You'd expect both the chargers here, oh no, just your DC charger over here on the front wing. Now if you join me around the back, that's where the DC charger is. All the electric cars in China have them both in the same place. So you have to think, where's the charger gonna be? And what type of charger is it going to be? Because you need to reverse in or front park in. There you go, that's your DC fast charging. And that's kind of another pain point for me for this car. So it's got a 70.3 kilowatt hour battery, but it's not the most efficient, this car. It does something like 14.6 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. Like the Atlantics I drove a few weeks ago, the Envo, they're under 12 now, or around 12 kilowatts per 100 kilometers. So this is quite a thirsty car. And the other problem is that this has only a max charging speed of 95 kilowatt hours, is that right? Anyway, 95, which is not very fast. It can charge this battery in 30 to 40 minutes. It's not a huge battery. But again, the other players on the market are amazing charging speeds now, 10, 20 minutes. This is kind of seems like last generation technology. And yes, this car is 2 or 3 years old already. But you know, come on BMW, if you want to be at the front of the game, if you want to be front of the queue, and you're wondering why you're not selling as well, it's because the Chinese automakers can do this so much better already and then charge a lot less money for it. Now let's see what this is like to drive on the highway. So far we've been on country roads, it's been impressive. But already this just feels, I feel very much connected to the road. I feel very secure in the fact that I'm driving this car, not loads of computers. And put your foot down, plenty of oomph, more than you really need, and it just does it, effortless. The thing is with the BMW, it gets all the basics right. So for example, the driving position where I'm sitting just feels good for a sedan or a performance sedan. It feels right. The steering feel, apart from these awful, I think these are third-party I don't think these are standard. The seating position all just work together to make the driving experience so much richer. And I think Chinese automakers struggle in that area because they're trying to develop new features to sell. They want the latest new features so they can write it on a headline, put out a press release about it, and people look at their car and maybe some of them will eventually buy it, whereas BMW's not doing that. Now the problem is if you compare this to its rivals, so let's say a Neo for example, this starts at 350,000 RMB, 350,000 RMB. What's that, $45,000 to $50,000? And you just think, well, for that money, I could get a Neo, which has all the other benefits, including the battery swapping, the servicing, you know, all of these added things for less money. And that's the problem. Like BMW, this is a fantastic car. This is made really well. I like it. I'm enjoying the drive. But that's not enough to get other people to buy it. A brand and driving feel will get a few people to buy the car, but not enough. And at the end of the day, I want my life with my car to be easy. I want it to be effortless. And unfortunately, brands like Neo kick the BMW's butt. BMW, if you're listening, and I know you're definitely not, this is a car which goes back to your roots. This is what defines a BMW. This is what everyone wants in Europe, basically. If you want a BMW and you want to go electric, this very car here is the one you want, not the other models you have out, which are kind of either ugly or expensive. This right here, they've got all of the right ingredients. In the Chinese market, it's not quite there. It's 85% of the way there. Ergonomically, the buttons are a bit of a mess, the screen system, all a bit of a mess, but it drives so much better than some of the Chinese automakers' cars. It feels very well built. And look at it, it looks good, it looks normal, it doesn't look funky, it doesn't look weird. I think this car would sell exceptionally well in Germany, or in Europe, or in the UK, or in the US. I just wish you guys had a chance to drive it. forbidden fruit. Sorry.